Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sara Geidlinger. This is week 7 of Marshall not joining me to introduce the podcast, but he actually introduced me to our guest, Jeff Chard. Jeff Chard is a history and social science teacher and the head of the history department at Sir John A. Macdonald School in Waterloo. He's also a 30-year veteran of the local music scene and plays with current indie rock group, The Means of Production. Jeff speaks to us about the rare magic that happens when musicians work together. He also talks to us about his involvement in Holocaust education and the consequences of action and inaction amid crimes against humanity. Here he is, Mr. Jeff Chard. Psst, this is an ad. Record Store Day, normally a one-day event in the spring but postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is looking a bit different this year for Encore Records in downtown Kitchener, still in business after 39 years. Celebrating its 12th year, Record Store Day is now scheduled to drop over 3 dates. August 29th, September 26th, and October 24th. The worldwide annual event brings together music fans and thousands of independent record stores like Encore Records, who last year stocked over 150 new titles for the occasion. Some of the rumored exclusives for Record Store Day include limited edition releases from U2, Lucinda Williams, The Who, David Bowie, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Katie Lang, My Chemical Romance, The Grateful Dead, Prince, Pink Floyd, Billie Eilish, Eminem, and Johnny Cash. There will also be a ton of great soundtrack albums this year, from Austin Powers' The Godfather and Doctor Who to Shaft in Africa, Lethal Weapon, and a spice-colored edition of Dune. Mark Logan, owner of Encore Records, says he is incredibly grateful for the support of his customers who have been ordering records online from his site, encorerecords.ca, during these trying times for all independent record shops. Thanks to their strong online catalog and loyal customer base, not just locally but across the country, Encore Records is here for isolated music lovers, offering good prices, curbside pickup, and fast shipping compared to larger online retailers. Whether you're an audiophile or returning to vinyl after a long digital hiatus, Record Store Day is an occasion to celebrate places like Encore Records, where you can support both your favorite artists and a downtown Kitchener institution. Find Encore Records at encorerecords.ca, Facebook at Encore Records, and Instagram at Encore Kids. Sometimes music is all you need to make you feel better. Welcome, Jeff Chard, to Bonn Park.
Pleasure to be here.
We're happy to have you here. My first question is actually, how did you and Marshall meet?
Marshall and I first set eyes on Marshall in about 2006 when he did a documentary called Level Set You Free about Jay Semko, 2006, right?
Yep.
At the Princess Cinema. I think it was in January. I remember it was cold. And it was a really excellent. I was a big Northern Pikes fan. Soon became a big Marshall Ward fan after that. And then my wife, Teresa, took a life drawing course with you soon after. And so our lives kind of intersected that way too. And I'm a big fan of Marshall's column in the Chronicle. I realized we had a lot in common, liked a lot of the same music, a lot of the same stuff. And I'm sure I emailed you and introduced myself and talked about some of our common musical influences and stuff, and told you about some musical stuff I was doing, and we kind of hit it off. And
yeah, and I've written several articles about you now
yes.
in the Waterloo Chronicle. But yeah, that's right. We met at the Jay Semko documentary screening and performance. Jay Semko played that night. Yeah,
it was great. That was a great night. Great documentary. Yeah, he performed a lot, and it was a cool setting too in the Princess for him to play. And I'd never seen a band play there. It was really cool.
Yeah, I remember you shared your love for Northern Pikes music.
That's right. And, that was the first thing.
We just had a few minutes really to talk, but
that's right.
And then eventually my daughter Mason started at grade 9 a few years back at Sir John A. Macdonald, where you teach, and you taught her this past year.
Yes,
and took her to Europe.
Mason and went to Europe together. That's right. Yeah.
So let's talk about your teaching first. You're head of the history department.
Yes.
At Sir John A. Macdonald. And how's that experience been, teaching history to those teenagers?
Amazing. I love it. I always say I'm teaching what I want, where I want, the way that I want. And what I mean by that is it's just a great group of students there, great people, Great staff, great philosophy behind the school. Really cool that it's a relatively new school, having opened in 2004. I'm very lucky and fortunate enough to teach stuff I actually like and am into. And so literally every class I teach, I really, in my spare time, read about it, and I'm really into it. So world history, particularly, I mean, it's about 700 years of world history, but particularly all sectors kind of lead to the Middle East and throughout this time, and Europe and such. Psychology and sociology, which is what I taught Mason in last year, is a huge program at our school, and I'm lucky enough to teach that in grade 11 and 12 as well.
So how do those, I'll call it a hybrid course. We didn't have courses like that in high school. Yeah. How do those work?
It's interesting. In university, they're all kind of on their own and in separate faculties even. But in high school, they've kind of thrown them together. So there's an introduction to anthropology, psychology, and sociology, and then a challenge and change in society, which incorporates them. So at the high school level, they're considered one discipline, which is a little bit strange because they're three different ones. But I guess the common thread, of course, is the study of human behavior. So
yeah,
I love that. I think that's amazing. But I think that proves that kids still care. Kids want to know.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
big time.
It's not true what they say about teenagers.
No, they want to know. That's right. And we explore everything, from the nature nurture debate to different forms of behavior in society and why these occur and when they're more likely to occur. And yeah, students, they really, it's an elective, so they don't have to take it. But we do get it's our most popular course by far. The grade 11 one and the grade 12, I think, is our second most popular in the department. And I think that's, the subject matter is a big part of that. And just, you look at some of the disturbing things, because when you want to look at human behavior and why humans do what they do, it's easier sometimes to look at the negative stuff. We try to emphasize that there's more positive than negative that goes on.
Right.
But, the world the way it is, and the media, and just, people's curiosities, obviously we spend a lot of time looking at some of that stuff and trying to figure out why and what influences that and what we can do to diminish it. So
do you think you find there's ever like a common thread of what the kids are picking back for? Like, what you want to teach, what you want to get across, but are they ever coming to you with a common thread of something that's missing that they're getting from us or from the media? Do they want to just know the facts, or do they want to know, like, why do these things keep happening? Like, what are they coming back with the questions of?
Yeah, a lot of it is they're very curious about what happens. They want to know details, that's for sure. They're not afraid to hear the details, and they want to know it. And yeah, they really want to know why. Why does some of this stuff happen? And we don't pretend to have all the answers.
Right.
But I like to say history provides the questions and social science provides the answers.
Oh yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
So
you're
never going to get exact answers, but if you analyze things and you look at, everything from a person's experiences or what's prevalent in our culture, or what we emphasize or don't emphasize, and you can track trends and stats and behaviors, we see that over time, societies are vastly, vastly different in everything, in behavior, in these things. They're not coincidental. So while we might not always have the smoking gun of this is why serial killers exist, we could certainly look at cultures where there's more of them compared to where there's less, and what's going on in those cultures, and many other different things like that. And students really want to know that. They really they're hungry for the analysis of it.
Do you think that creates, like, this is my question that I'm posing, because you're guiding me, I think, but do you think that creates like sympathy for people's types of lives, or
it's very
understanding?
That's something I think a lot about, and I have a quote I probably say too much to the students, which is, I literally probably say it every second day. We're looking at explanations here, not excuses. So I'll constantly say, because I'm very cognizant when I'm talking about some of these things that, say, somebody's gone through who's done a terrible thing, little voice in my head, says, talk about that again, about, again, we're not excusing, there is no excuse for this. No matter how tough you've had it or how rough it's been, we would have cried for you when you were 4 years old, but when you're 24 and you're doing terrible things to other human beings, that doesn't excuse it. But what it might do is help explain it. And if we want to get rid of it and diminish it, which is what we all want to do, then we want to talk about where it might come from or why it might occur. And another thing I'm always saying is, whoever it is we're talking about, Paul Bernardo or whoever, I'll say, none of us have any sympathy for him now. That's, we're not interested in helping him now, in therapy for him. we're, interested in as victims and helping them heal and the families. But if we can find the next Paul Bernard or the person who's on the road to doing that when they're young enough to get to them where we can influence them before they do it, that's what we're interested in. So that's why we study it.
Right.
So because we don't want to be voyeuristic, and that's the risk you run when you're teaching teenagers about some of this stuff.
Yeah, isn't that the hot kind of topic? Like giving the name, like, because I have a physical reaction when you say Paul Bernardo.
Yes.
Right? So giving that name a voice and
yes.
saying that out loud is the fame that comes along with those actions.
That's right.
And that's what we're trying to disassemble, right?
That's a struggle too. So for example, there's one in the grade 12 course, we talk about Mark Le Pen, who did those terrible things in Montreal, referred to, by the media as a Montreal massacre against those, innocent young women. And I show a film, the filmmaker deliberately chose not to mention his name in the whole film. And that really made me think too. I think dealing with teenagers today, it's not going to work if I don't name names.
Right.
They do want to know the details. And I think, they're of a certain age and again, they choose to take it. And I'm always saying, tomorrow we're going to talk about this. If if anybody doesn't feel like it at the time, they always have the option of opting out for that day. And so they do want to know those details, but again, it's a fine line between talking about it in any way that sort of gives
that's
any
sensationalizing or
yeah. That sensationalism. Really try hard not to do that. Really try not to dwell on exactly this happened and this way, and that sort of thing. And it's more about, at the same time though, they I think most students at that age, they're mature enough and they want to learn. And to take a course like that, they're going to hear some of that. But again, we're going to not dwell on the details. We're going to talk about what happened and then really get into, if we spend 5% on what somebody like that did, we're going to spend 95 on the childhood and the family life and the culture.
Right.
And is there anything in our culture that might influence people to have certain viewpoints? Is there something teaching misogyny? Is there something teaching sexism? Is there implicit acceptance that we don't even realize for violence against women in our culture that might be an underlying thing that people don't really think about on a daily basis? So it's those issues that we really talk about a lot rather than the actual crimes. I mean, we have to kind of start with that, but.
Well, I think, and Marshall and I were actually just talking about this before you got here about communication and the why and, kind of sucking it up and understanding sometimes you just have to have hard conversations and talk about things. But isn't that the whole key? Like if you get behind that sort of why and that sort of relating to these kids' everyday life, or to even if it's me learning about it, my 43 years old, learning about that topic and relating it to my life, that's the only way to really break through with information. Otherwise it's just swiping and clicking.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because you can look it all up on Wikipedia, you got it. But it's that analysis of it. That's the thing. The description's a small part of it, but the bigger question and the bigger answer is the analysis. And that's what the students, they like to do. Because I think when they hear about these things, nothing ever excuses it, but the explanation might make them feel a little bit better because they realize it's not just random. It's, because we all wonder, how can people do such terrible things? And, so this might provide some kind of an answer in that it's a combination of multi-factors that we don't understand all of them, but we might be able to pinpoint kind of, some of them. And that might, hopefully, the reason I do what I do is because I'm hoping that motivates these students when they go out and become social workers and police officers and teachers and lawyers and doctors and whatever they become. That when they're dealing with other people and particularly children and stuff, that they're going to remember these lessons and that they're going to remember that it really comes down. Sometimes it just comes down to individuals treating other individuals the way they want to be treated.
Right. And
that's how we're going to get to a better world. And it's very idealistic, but that's, guilty as charged.
It's sandbox culture. It's right. Really,
That's why I go to work, right? I wouldn't go if it wasn't, if it was just about the terrible details. It's about so much more. It's about what we can do to fix as much as we can.
You said something to me shortly after my daughter Mason started grade 9. We were sitting in a pub talking, and I was asking you about bullying and in high school at SJM, and I remember you said something. I'm just paraphrasing you, but you said something like, "It's almost like it's uncool. Like if it is happening or seen, there's a good chance some students will step in and not be bystanders and say something. I thought, wow, that's awesome. What a different experience that must be than my high school experience.
You know, it really is. You know, you get a lot of people, you tell them you work with teenagers, oh, isn't it terrible, this and that. It's the opposite. It's great. It always has been. But it's getting better. People seem to think, you know, things are getting worse in society. I don't know if that's a normal thing that we just think, oh, you know, this or that. But some really good trends. And I mean, there's, you know, not everything is good. There's some technology issues that might be going the other way, but there's good and bad to everything. But a really cool thing in the last decade, I would say, that I've noticed, particularly at SJAM, but I'm sure at any high school, is that, yeah, bullying is no longer, it's really considered uncool, which is a good thing. I mean, it should have always been uncool, as we all know, but people wouldn't step in before. It was, you know, kind of considered, oh, you know, that's just how they are and you can't, you know, change it or whatever. Well, you can. And one of the things we've done a good job as a society, I think, is getting that word out there that that's not cool. It's actually lame. It's terrible. It's you know, why would we do that? And you know, I think students have really taken that message to heart, and it's their message in a lot of ways, and it's them saying that to each other. And it's just, you know, I can't tell you the amount of times that you're much more likely to get in a class somebody standing up for somebody else than putting them down. And it, you know, that's definitely something I've noticed getting better.
Yeah, I remember in that same conversation I was describing with you, I remember I said to you, with probably a bit of disdain in my voice, I said, those teenagers you teach, do you like them? I asked you. And I remember you didn't take a second to say, I love them.
Yeah, I do. It's true.
Yeah,
I do. It's, they're awesome. You know, that's in all sincerity. 99% of them are amazing people. Obviously, when we were there too, sometimes we made bad choices. We see that sometimes, but I'm very optimistic for the next generation. When people ask me that, I get asked that a lot. And I think a lot of people expect to hear, oh, it's, you know, society's going downhill or this or that. And, you know, I would say the opposite. I know SJAM is a very special place. I know that. I'm spoiled to teach there with these students. But I would say, you know, all over KW, I don't think there's a bad high school. And I think, you know, students are essentially good people. Human beings are essentially good. That's why I get up in the morning at least. And just, you know, I think we're in good hands. And, you know, anybody who's cynical out there that thinks that that's not the case, I would love for them just to come and see, you know, even if they just went and hung out in a high school, you're more likely to see, I mean, you're anywhere, any place, you're going to see some acts of cruelty or this or that, but you're honestly going to see so many more acts of kindness. And it's really heartening to see that on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I've met many amazing students from SJAM. One of them will be a guest next week. Oops.
Well, that's okay. Podcast weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. In podcast time, it'll be next week.
Awesome.
Hey, can we talk about Holocaust education?
Sure.
Yeah. How do you approach that?
Yeah, this is something that's a huge part of what you do.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is. Being into history, that's, you know, 20th century history is kind of my area, and also psychology and sociology. And it all kind of meets at an intersection of genocide education. And in fact, we used to have a genocide course at SJAM. It hasn't run for the last couple of years because there's so many other good courses, I think, that students can't take everything. But I've been fortunate enough to present as well around Toronto, Montreal, and in a conference in England on genocide education. And it's, you know, when you tell people that you're interested in that, they think, you want to study that? That's terrible. Honestly, I think of myself as a very optimistic person. And when I'm studying that, it's, you know, not to, again, dwell on the details. It's to try to find what the ingredients are for that so that we can try to stop it or diminish it. And there are, again, I would argue that, you know, when there are elements you can look at in culture and other things that definitely make it more likely. It's not equal across the world. It's certain societies and cultures and the way that we do things that lend itself to being more likely to some kind of a genocide occurring. So I've always sort of been interested in that. And fortunately, I think in 2010, I went on, it's called the March of the Living for Educators. So we went to Europe for 10 days with a group of teachers. We traveled around to former concentration camps and sites of genocides. At each one, we would learn about what happened, and then we would engage in discussion and analysis about political movements and this and that and things that made it possible. And the big thing being, of course, the issue of bystanders. One thing that I've realized and tried to incorporate in a lot of my teaching, whether it's genocide or history or psychology and sociology, is wherever people believe we came from. So if people are religious and believe we were created by God or gods, or people are atheists and believe it's the Big Bang and evolution and everything else, or a combination of all of those, one thing I don't think we can deny is that human beings are factory settings. Come on, keep your head down, don't stand out. So bystanding, I would argue, wherever we come from, the research says that it's the natural state. So it shouldn't surprise us when most people don't do anything. Good people too, when most good people in most situations don't become upstanders and help people if there's a risk to themselves. So knowing that, I don't think we should throw our hands up and run away and say that's it. We can definitely try to change that. But the thing that we need to do is to realize it's not natural to be an upstander or a hero. And so we have to prepare ourselves and motivate ourselves to do that. So we have to say to ourselves, if somebody collapses in a mall, we have to say, it's the natural thing that even if everybody in this room is an awesome person, it's natural they're all going to look at each other to get help. And most people are not going to rush in there and say, I'll help, I'll do CPR, I'll call.
This feels abnormal to me. I am somehow on the other side of this. I'm constantly roasted by my husband because I'm the first one in there, sometimes putting ourselves, and I'm not a lifesaver or a paramedic or anything like that.
But you're an upstander, that's good.
I think that it might just come naturally to me, and I'm not really sure why. And it's sometimes been a bone of contention for the two of us in certain situations where I might be putting myself in danger, but I see it, and I think I maybe feel like everyone's mom. I don't really know what it is.
That's awesome.
But I get frustrated with the bystander.
Yeah.
And I had written down, because I know there's one of your lyrics is the bystander upstander, which will be for
right,
music.
Right. Yeah.
I know we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel like the people are choosing to bystand, and what you're telling me is they're not. And I've never really looked into it or done any research to know any different.
No excuse for it, but don't be too hard on them, because I think what the research tells us, and examples multiple across every society, is that's kind of the natural state of being. So again, rather than saying, well, let's just leave it at that, keep doing what you're doing, because that's a great example and the world needs you. But also, I think we need to help people understand that in those situations, their first reaction might not be the right one.
Yeah.
And the first reaction might be, who's going to help?
Yeah.
I'm busy. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to put myself out there, whatever it is. Right.
Right.
I don't want to stand up for that kid over there. I wish, I feel like I should, but I'm, that kind of thing. And so we might have to say to ourselves, nobody else is going to do it if I don't. So let's go. So that's the big thing.
And there could be an element of that fight, flight, and freeze.
Totally.
The freeze that's in there. Because I've frozen before in situations also.
Absolutely.
No one's ever doing the right thing all the time.
Absolutely.
So when you're teaching this to the kids then through the Holocaust survivor education, tell us more about that.
So basically when I came home from all that and I was thinking about that, it influenced what I did in the classroom, but I also thought that maybe it's something that the community might be interested in as well. And I'd had a couple parents' nights where when I brought in these survivors for the kids, parents would say to me, oh, I've never heard of Holocaust survivor. I wish they had that at my high school. And I just got to thinking that, why not?
Why not? Yeah.
So we started running community seminars in the evenings. We decided, okay, let's try it out. Tuesday nights, we'll do 3 of them. We'll bring a survivor in. We'll bring a professor from the university in. We'll get a couple teachers to do presentations. I honestly thought, if we get 15 people, I'll be happy. We got quite a few more than that. Now we do it quite regularly, and we're lucky enough to have a lot of people come out, and it's a real cross section of the community. So you get a lot of older people, I think, who the kids are a bit older, so they can come out because not everybody can make it out on a weeknight, and a lot of other people, middle-aged people, some younger people, a real cross section. And for a lot of them, these are the themes we talk about, and the survivors, when they come in, that's their big message, right? Again, they'll tell their story, but their big message they spend most of their time on is what a difference it made if there was an upstander there. Could have been one person that saved their life, or what a difference it would have made for others if there was more. So that's a really positive message that I think, should be for all of us, and so we've had a lot of success, I think, with having the survivors come in, not just for the students during the day, which they still do, but to come in at night and talk to the community.
So the average age of one of the survivors that has come to talk to you is about what?
They're getting older
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So we've lost a few as well recently, and so they're in their 90s basically, even if they were pretty young.
So right off the bat, you already have an element of anyone who's coming is going to be showing some respect to hear their story regardless, because we've got that beautiful mentorship, senior respect thing going on, which
Right.
I think us Canadians are really good at. I can't even imagine some of the stories that you've heard. Is there anything that you can relate? I don't want to get into gory details, but is there anything that sticks out?
It's interesting what you said. When survivors come in and speak to students, or even the community, but speaking of the students, just because I teach them every day, they learn so much more from a survivor than they do in my class in weeks. Just because it's that emotive thing, they can identify and empathize as a human being, and the message that they get. Often, like Bill Gleed, who passed away last year, who became a good friend of mine. We worked together for a very long time. He would come in. He was very generous with his time at SJAM, both in the day and in the evening. He would always summarize by saying, kids, go home tonight and hug your parents. Even if, sometimes they do things that bother you, trust me, they love you. They're doing everything for you. Then kiss the ground because you're in the best country in the world. And then his thing was do one good deed every day. That's 35 million good deeds in Canada. We'll have a better world. So that's what really sticks with me. Yeah. And that's what sticks with the students. And we see, after Bill and others speak that have come in, there's a long line of kids that want to talk to them and give them a hug. And, often there's tears and this and that. And you can just tell how much they've connected. You've got this 90-year-old and this 15-year-old, and just, it's a beautiful thing to see. Yeah. It's why we do what we do. And it's, it just, those things you can't really put into words about how much you've learned when you hear that. It's a feeling.
But once again, I think it's what everything needs. All any of us need is a little bit of community. Really, we just need somebody of every age near us. We need to be able to openly speak with them, and it doesn't matter where they're coming from, what they believe, what path they're choosing to take along their way. It's that community that's going to bring everybody together.
Totally agree. And all the stats support that as well. We talk about this in class as well. The least racist people in the world know the most people of other races. Yeah. So it's the insulated communities where they've never met anybody, where they have, prejudicial ideas because they have, there could be ignorance, it could be lack of experience. But when people mix and talk, the level of prejudice, racism, sexism goes down. So that is, I agree with you 100%. That's the cure. Yeah. Right? Integrate, talk. If there's somebody you don't agree with, maybe you should sit down and talk. You don't have to agree with them when you're done, but at least you hear what they have to say. They hear what you have to say.
Yeah. And then you can choose whether or not you like them.
That's right.
Based on the kind of person they are.
Based on the person they are and not what group they're in or whatever. But absolutely that, and that's, again, coming back to SJAM, that's a wonderful thing about SJAM is it's just a great mixture of people and different cultures and different age groups and genders and religions and lack of religion and this and that and it works and it's just people get along and that's I think the cure to the world's ills, not to overstate it, but
no, it is it's just to get to know people
exactly and mixing and not just staying with your own whatever that is, right? Your own group that you're comfortable with. Get out there, put yourself out there a bit, and the first thing you'll learn is, wow, that person's a lot like me, even if they come from a totally different place and it seemed like we have nothing in common. And that's what it's all about.
It is, yeah.
If we could transition into your music.
Oh, I'd love to.
I came and saw your band, The Means of Production. Awesome band.
Thanks for coming.
You're such a good singer. I was at Patent's Social in Waterloo, and it was a magical night. Just an awesome
So I haven't been in there yet. It looks pretty cool,
It's
though.
great.
Yeah?
It's great. Yeah.
Really cool.
It's a nice place.
And you played a new song that I wasn't familiar with that I had goosebumps listening to it. And it had a theme of a survivor.
Yes, that was about Bill.
Yeah,
I wrote
so
that about Bill.
can you talk about that song and the story of that song?
Yeah, sure. It's called, the name has changed a couple times, but I think it's called Fight the Good Fight. We just recorded it too.
Yeah.
So it'll be on our CD there. It's everything we've just talked about here today. That's what the song is about. So it's just about Bill himself and his just a little bit about his story and
what's Bill's last name? I saw
Gleed.
Gleed.
Yeah. And his despite everything that he'd been through, he chose to share that. And the reason that he shared it, because I know it was painful, you know, you could see, and he told me that, and he's told others that. So he wasn't doing it for himself. The reason he was doing it is because he thought it might make a difference. And I can tell you it has, that's for sure. All that stuff that we talked about previously, and just what he said and talking about his experiences and those messages that he gave. The song is about that, about...
can you share a lyric or two? I remember more the feeling of it. I don't remember the lyrics exactly.
Sure,
I just remember how it made me feel.
The first lines are, went through hell and lived to tell it, lost so many that you loved, didn't surrender to the anger, taught us we need to stand up. So again, didn't give in to that anger, chose to turn to love, chose to share a very painful part of his life because he lost almost all of his family. And chose to share that because he wanted to help people understand that we're all the same, and that terrible tragedy that occurred, which, and he would be the first to tell you, has happened before and since, sadly, in many other contexts, that we're not doing good enough, that we need to realize we're the same, and that we need to have empathy, and we need to stand up. We need to be upstanders. And that's, the song just talks about that. And we're lucky enough, we just, we're going to put some samples of Bill's.
Oh, that's great.
Bill talking in there. His family agreed to that and very supportive of it. So we're going to put a little bit of that in there with the message that he gives. And that's really what the song is about. It's sort of a tribute to him, but also a call for what he called for, which is understanding and tolerance and empathy and love. You know, he was love.
And we were herded into that, like you see, with black-clad Nazi soldiers with truncheons in their head, men, women, children, sick people, pregnant people, babies, jam-packed into this railroad car.
You went through hell and lived to tell it. Lost so many that you loved. Didn't surrender to the anger. Taught us we need to stand up. Fight the good fight. Expose the lies. You show us the light. So you survive. Many things about you impress me. You were good, funny and wise. Despite all the things they did to you, you remained optimistic and kind. Fight the good fight. Expose the lies. Show us the light. So you survive. Fight the good fight. Expose the lies. You show us the light. So you survive. I know I told you this when I hope I told you this when gave yourself to perfect strangers so they could learn from your life. Spoke out until the very end. against the hatred and its rise. Fight the good fight. Expose the lies. You show us the light. So you survive. Take back the night. Expose the lies. You showed us what's right. So you survive. You survive. You survive. You survive. You survive.
We traveled in their boxcars for 2 days and 2 nights. No food, no water, no hygienic facility. Make a decision in yourself that every day you'll do one small good. Because imagine that if everyone in Canada would do a good thing every day, there'll be 35 million good things happening, and maybe that would change this world to a better place to live.
So I've listened to so many of your records now, your different bands, and is that glass half full, you know,
Right.
approach to seeing
Yeah.
things. And tell us about your bands.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit of a chronology of
Yeah,
your band
well,
life.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't feel that old, but when I look back, when you
None
asked
of
me to
us do.
send you the chronology, it was like, whoa, that's a long time. So yeah, it all started in high school, like a lot of people for me, and in a band called Back to Front. And I remember, I don't know if you guys, I'm from Cambridge, so the Highlands, I don't know if you remember the Highlands.
Oh, I know the Highland, yeah.
It was famous for, it's closed now, so I can say for underage drinking
Yeah.
and everything else that went on.
I was such a nerd in high school. I was there and I wasn't drinking.
You were the only one.
I probably,
You
I
were
wasn't
the
even
only
the
one.
driver.
I was 16 years old when we played there, which is highly illegal, of course, and we opened for National Velvet. If you
so
remember them,
cool.
so
Yeah.
that was kind of fun.
We were singing a little bit before. Well,
Sex
Marshall
Gorilla.
was.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Hey, I just want to tell you, the first time I saw, I don't know if a video on Much Music ever had the impact on me that one did. I remember it's 1990.
It was a
Right,
big deal.
yeah.
And it comes, National Velvet, Sex Gorilla comes on, and Maria Del Mar is this like Amazon woman with this beautiful long dark hair.
Wow.
I just remember a lot of pawing. going
Yeah,
on.
yes, absolutely.
And
For the listeners, I'm miming pawing. there.
dangerous sexual lyrics. And
Yeah.
it was just, I was like,
They were
wow.
pretty subversive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is
Yeah.
this?
I think it was 89 when we opened for him, so
Yeah.
probably just before that.
I actually read an interview with Maria Del Mar where she said how the song was called Sarsaparilla, and somebody after the show said, "Hey, I love that song, Sex Gorilla," and she was
good.
like, "Hey, that's a great title." So she rewrote the song
That's
to
good.
be Sex. Anyways,
That's good.
Tell us about that.
Well, we never got to meet them. That's fun. That's the
Oh,
thing about
okay.
opening
Oh,
bands.
isn't
You
that
assume
great?
they're all hanging out backstage, but
No.
just part and parcel that, yeah, you're in a different area and
Yeah,
kind of funny. But yeah, that was fun. And then in university, I was in a band called the Antisocials.
That's a great name.
It was a lot of fun. That was, we played live a bunch in Back to Front, but the Antisocials, we really played a lot in Toronto, played the Alma Combo, which was awesome. A lot of Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo kind of thing. And it was a time of kind of the grunge movement.
Yeah.
And it was a little, it was pretty raw and pretty, also just being in university when you think you know everything and you're a little more radical and stuff. So there was,
You mean you
that
didn't
had
know
that element.
everything?
That's right. Yeah.
Did that change?
That's what all my songs are about now.
and also during the Canadian rock renaissance. Where
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there was, yeah.
all those bands.
And that's,
Pursuit
we love
of
the same
Happiness,
stuff.
Tragic
Pursuit of
Rio,
Happiness,
yeah.
Grapes of Wrath,
Yeah. Yeah.
Northern Pikes, all that stuff, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was something I really wanted to do, I'm a big fan of a lot of different types of music, but one of the types I really like is kind of the electronic mixed with guitar, stuff like New Order and electronic and stuff.
That stuff still
Johnny
just makes
Marr,
me
Bernard Sumner.
happy. Yeah.
I love it. So I really wanted to do that. So in 97, I did a little side project with the guy, which a little bit. And then I met Chad, and we formed VPS, and really sort of took that as far as we could with, he was the sort of keyboard guy and all that production stuff, and I was the guitar and bass guy, and we kind of mashed it all together.
And all that amazing swirling electronica.
It was fun.
Pounding percussive. It's just, amazing music.
It's funny. It's to do it. I don't know if we did it right or anything, but to do it where it sounds okay, it's harder than it looks, because it's kind of two totally separate types of music.
Yeah.
And to take that synth and make it work with an electric guitar and stuff, and do it where you sort of honor both, and one doesn't kind of overtake the other, is I don't know if we ever did it, but that's what we tried to do with all that stuff, and it was fun.
Your new band, The Means of Production.
Yeah.
It's a pretty new band. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with the whole band. Where was that? Death Valley something? What's that?
Death Valley's little brother?
Yeah.
Oh, I
That's
love that
right.
place.
Great place.
Great coffee and bourbon.
Yeah. And so this is has more of a rock sound to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I loved being in VPS with Chad, and I called it music by USB, because we jam a little bit together, but most of the time he'd do something, give me a USB, drop it off at my house, I'd do something, send it back, and then we'd get together, do the vocals, that stuff. So
are you familiar with the band The Postal Service?
Yes,
that's
yeah,
reminding
that's where
me
they got
of.
the name.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, we were kind of like a little postal service.
Yeah.
Which was fun and awesome. And but the one thing it didn't have was that live thing.
Right.
Right.
That little edge, right?
We could have, maybe tried to take it live, but it might have felt a bit constructed too. And that, I don't know if we were there. So the one thing that I always kind of thought about was I really, at some point, Chad and I are like brothers. We're still close and still do stuff and all that. But I needed to form a band or get in a band that was playing live again. That was what I was missing. And so Jeff Davis, I found him on Kijiji. Like we talked about earlier, it's like a date.
Yep.
Being in a band is like marriage without the sex kind of thing.
Yep.
You go, you meet at a coffee shop in case somebody's off the rails and you don't, want them to know where you live.
You can always pull the ripcord if you need to.
That's right. Hey, go. I got to go to the bathroom. See, I'll come back.
I'm
so
gonna take
we
my
met
jacket
and,
with me.
all that kind of thing, and really hit it off. And we started just kind of playing, the two of us, a little bit at his place and jamming, and we love all the same music, which is really cool. Then he introduced me to a bass player that he played with, Brent, who's an awesome guy as well, likes the same kind of music, and we really hit it off. And then we found Johnny through a friend, through Facebook, which is how you find everything these days, right?
That's right.
Looking for this, anybody know? And somebody said, I got the perfect guy for you, and they were right. And so the big thing is, we love kind of the same music, and we kind of have the same goals. We don't want to play 7 nights a week, but we also don't want to play once every 2 months. We want to play as much as we can, that's for sure. And we wanted to record and play live and all that stuff and write songs. And, as human beings too, these guys are just awesome. They're already like brothers to me. And it's really cool to, it's funny, you think back to all the years in the band. And again, they're like little relationships, little marriages and stuff. And there's always, there always seem, when I was younger, I kind of took it all for granted, I think, which is common for relationships too, I guess. And just, you assume, I could just find another band anytime, and it's, this and that. But really, if you really think about it, it's hard to find people you like as people and as musicians, and that, you're on the same page and want to do the same types of things. So very thankful for that. And I think we got a good thing going, and really happy to be doing it. That's for sure.
And you guys are recording right now?
We are. We are recording at Small Dog Studio with Ian
great.
Graham, Victoria Park in Kitchener. And we just finished. We sort of, we did 2 last year. Then we, took a bit of a pause and rehearsed, and then we did 4 more. And then we thought, let's do a gig. So we did the Pat and Social, rehearsed for that. And then we just went back, and we've just finished 4 more. We've still got the mixing and maybe 1 more guitar part to do. And then I think we're going to do a little CD and maybe a little release in the fall. Play Lee's Palace in the fall as well, and kind of go from there. It's funny, we're still of the making CD mind, but these days, I know Marshall's a big lover of CDs. I don't know if you love CDs, Sarah,
I do,
but I still buy
and
them,
records.
I love it.
I love it too.
I love albums. I love, they kind of tell a story. I love the artwork. You must love the artwork and the photos.
The artwork and the photos were everything, right? Like
Yeah.
that's such a strong image. Me and Marshall were talking about that actually when we were getting our photo taken for the podcast. We were emulating some of that energy, I think. We'll have to show those to you. But it's not just that, it's the richness of the music, right?
Totally.
So when you flatten to MP3, you lose like 50%
That's
of
true.
what is actually coming into your,
Big time
to your
true.
ear.
That's
and
right.
from that, you're actually losing out on endorphins that you would be creating.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're not getting, this is actually created by a German guy, I'll have to look up his name. When you flatten to that MP3, you're getting half the sound, and then when maybe you're converting to another format, you're losing even more. So you might remember a certain feeling when you heard that live or when it was on your record or whatever, but kids, if they're just downloading MP3s or if somebody's just listening through their Alexa, I hope she doesn't hear me, they're not getting that endorphin response from the richness of all those other levels of the music that they didn't get in. You're going out there and actually playing, and people are going to get that from you guys because they're going to be live listening to that music. They're going to be getting those vibrations and getting that energy.
Right.
Yeah,
I love it.
I maybe went off a little bit there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but it was a captivating stage presence when I saw you live.
Thank you.
You were kind of
Thank you.
drenched in these beautiful colored lights, the band behind you.
Oh, that's great.
And
Thank you.
like I found myself wondering sometimes where you were in your head. You know what I mean? Like your eyes are closed often, and you're maybe really concentrating on lyrics.
Yeah, half of it is me trying to remember my own
Is that
lyrics.
what it is? Yeah, I was gonna say, but you must be feeling there was a lot of love in the room that night.
Yeah, and the lyrics will come to in those times. And one of the great things about live, I think, is it's never the same
It's
two
never
nights
the
in a
same,
row.
Yeah.
Unless you've seen Ozzy Osbourne. He's been performing the same set list since
Right.
1992.
Right.
Hey, it worked for him.
That's awesome. But yeah, it really is, not to be corny, but a symbiotic thing, isn't it? Like audience, like all the good concerts I've been to, you feel
Yeah.
like they're singing to you, right? You feel like you know what they're going to say. It's emotive, right? And that sort of thing. And yeah, definitely feel myself getting into that as I'm up there, and it just kind of comes out. And
Sarah and I were talking a bit about you being a musician and a teacher, and were we talking about how you balance that? Or
Yeah,
how-
and what
how
kind of
you-
crossover you might have. Like, do you ever feel like the rock star in the classroom, or do you ever? Do
Never.
you know what I mean? But I mean, no, like I know the kids aren't going to give you that feeling, but like, are you ever? Is your mind somewhere at one, or are you trying to bring them all together? Because obviously, your lyrics are influenced by the stuff that you've been teaching.
it is interesting. I've never really sat down and done it, but I think if I was to look at the songs I've written in the last several years, a lot of them either come from lessons or end up being,
Yeah.
and because it's the stuff I think about and that, again, I'm into kind of in my spare time as well. And that I sometimes struggle with and sometimes wonder and all these types of things. So it is interesting in that sense,
Yeah.
but it's funny. The kids know I'm in a band and stuff, but I don't really talk about it much. Just cause we're doing other things, and I've never played any of my music for the class.
Right.
It's just, it doesn't feel.
That sounds painful. Yeah, like.
And I don't. It's like a captive audience.
Yeah.
I just don't
Are you
think
gonna
it's
sit
right.
there and watch them listen?
Yeah. So it's not. Yeah, and just not. But I guess the lesson version of half those songs are already there anyway.
already there,
And we're
yeah.
going back and forth. It's not just me up there talking, but a lot of the subject matter would be similar because that's the stuff that kind of inspires me to think and write and talk about and analyze and struggle with and all those sorts of things. So. It's funny, but it's, I find people always say, well, how do you have time to do this or that? It took me a while to figure it out. One of those things that comes with age, but the busier I am at school or in life, the more I need the music
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of, even if the time is a bit less than when I was younger, it's sort of more significant and
Right.
vital when I'm doing it, and I need it more. And just looking at the Post-it notes over there, my life is a series of Post-it notes. And so I walk around constantly in my car. I've got I've got everywhere. I still use an agenda, this and that. And when I go to the gym too, I've always got a pen nearby because I'll often think of something or something will jump out, or I'll see something and just write down a line or write down a subject matter or a song title or a phrase or something. Probably like you do with
I
I'm
do.
sure you bring a camera around and just,
I do, and I'm big on lists too.
Yeah.
It's all about lists.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's kind of like, it feels like a separate part of my life, but in a way it's all the same. It's all just that process
Yeah.
and
Like maybe there's not too much code switching that has to happen in between each task.
That's right.
I think you might be living the dream.
Yeah, I think I am.
I think you
Definitely.
are.
I am living the dream.
And at the same time, you're giving back to our community. So we are too, right? So no, really, it's like you were talking earlier about symbiosis. That's everything in one package. You're living a life that makes you happy with purpose.
Right.
And you're actually throwing some of that purpose back at us.
Right.
Yeah. I love it.
When I think about your lyrics, and I could probably sing a lot of your songs back to you. I know.
Are you going to sing one now?
Awesome.
No.
You probably know the lyrics better than me.
Probably. I think about how there's a bit of an abstraction to them sometimes. I often wonder, who are you singing about, and who's that? Who's that's about. And but I think about how your lyrics can be so deep and so compelling that only somebody who cares incredibly so much for their relationships and their friendships, not just your romantic life, but your friends, I guess, and your family, could write lyrics like that. You must.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes you can know somebody, and they don't necessarily chat with you that way.
Right.
And then you see their art, and you're like, "Wow, what is this?" Right?
Yeah.
You do things in your art.
Where did
that you
this
might
come
not-
from? Yeah.
And although you're very articulate and well spoken with us here, your music's on a whole different level.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
For me, what the bands that I like, it's that old thing. I think, Morrissey said it or something many years ago. He said in one of the lyrics, "What does this song tell me about my life?" And that really stuck with me. And I think if a listener should be able to listen to a song and it should say something to them about their life. So not be so specific that it's this context, it's, somebody talking about this, but something that people can relate to. Obviously, it should come from a place of meaning, hopefully. Not that it has to. Some of the best lyrics are the ones that don't. But, it sounds corny, but it should be what the song means to the listener. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of songs I listen to, the meaning is totally different than I think, but I don't even want to know. I just like listening to it, and it means that something to me. I can relate to this sort of thing. So, yeah, I'd be very happy if anybody listening could just, sort of identify in some way with something.
I got to interview Canadian producer David Foster this year.
Yes, I read that.
And he said when he finally got to meet Seal, he asked him what the song "Kissed by a Rose" is about. And Seal said, "I don't know."
That's great. Maybe you shouldn't have asked that question.
But that song, you can imagine how many people interpret that song in different ways, right?
Yeah.
It can be a very sad song. It can be, but I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It bothers me sometimes when bands go into too much detail about what their songs are about.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind knowing, what the general topic is, but when they kind of break it down a little too much, it takes away a bit of the mystery, maybe, and maybe spoils it a bit.
It might take away that piece for you, right?
Yeah.
Do you find? I just want to go back to your writing process a little bit. When you're writing lyrics, do you find you're cognizant of the audience, or is that just something that's happening organically through your writing process?
Interesting.
Because I find in any work I do, photography, writing, whatever it might be, if I flip over into that audience point of view, I really get inside my own head.
Right.
I'm sure Marshall can relate to that with his writing. But does it work for you? Do you do it? Do you not do it?
It's interesting, because I also play guitar. A lot of it, I'll write some chords I like, and then the words I'll have to match it.
Right.
But what you say in those words is the thing. So some of my stuff is autobiographical. Some of it is not. Comes from other perspectives. And I don't ever do it thinking what's somebody gonna, kind of write it so that somebody interprets it a certain way. Right. But I think the themes that I write, I think it's more about the theme and the thing that I'm writing about, and then it's kind of an organic process.
Do you get into a flow then?
Yeah. And what I find is it's either lightning fast, like on this record we're putting out maybe 3 of the songs, 4 minutes. I wrote the chords and the words, done, 4 minutes. And that might be bad. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it either comes, or other times it'll be weeks. Right. And it just won't come back to it, or it won't inspire me. So I don't know if it's a subject matter or the mood I'm in. A lot of it's the mood. I'm Robert Smith, who I'm a huge fan of from The Cure.
Smith, yeah.
I remember reading an interview where he said most of the songs he's written, he's been in some kind of alleviated state. I'm sure he also, drugs and alcohol was part of it, but he also said sleep deprivation, being sick, having gone through something emotional. And it makes sense to me that when your defenses are down,
I was just gonna say that when your guard is down a little bit, it's gonna let that through.
it flows. You got it. And so I never say, okay, I'm gonna write a song tonight. I'm gonna go do this or have a drink or I'm gonna not sleep. But when I think back about these, whether they're good or not, the ones that have kind of come out quickly, there's always been something. There's been something emotional or something
where it's just flowed out.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Regina Spektor? It's a totally different type of music.
I do. Yeah.
Pianist and singer and all around
amazing,
glorious weirdo. And she said something once in an interview which really stuck with me, which was, the idea of sitting down to write a song. Like, here's my writing time. That's disgusting to me. I don't even know how that would look. It just comes out.
Yeah.
That we should all be so lucky that the art just comes out.
Exactly. But there's a really good point there because, but I don't know about you guys, but the least creative I've ever been is if I'll say, well, tomorrow night, Teresa and the kids are gone. I'm going to sit down for half an hour and write a song. It doesn't work.
No.
In fact, it might come out when it's the worst possible time. I've got 10 people in my house. That happened actually a couple months ago. I have to go write this down. So, and I got an idea with this and so it makes sense. Yeah. It's not being creative, you guys know, I think. And it's not
for sure.
You don't pick and choose.
Exactly.
Even write my newspaper column. Like the weekend will be ahead.
Right.
And I'll say to my wife, Sylvia, I need to write this column this weekend. Yeah. And she'll say, well, can you do it on Sunday between 2 and 3 before we go visit my family? It's like, no.
But maybe you could make time if it was during family visit.
No, truth. I usually get up at like 6 a.m. and do it before
do you really? Is that when you feel the most creative?
It's when the house is quiet. And my brain is pretty alive and I like being up early.
This is actually the inception of this podcast. I'm going to go off here, but 4 to 6 weeks ago, a month and a half ago, something. So. I'm up early too. My family sleeps so gently and soundly. The whole house is asleep, as it is every weekend. And I'm up running the blender, making myself a smoothie. And I see Marshall walk by my kitchen window. And I flung the window open. I just about hurt myself. And I was like, Marshall, do you have time to talk? Where are you? Where are you going? What's going on?
Yeah, that's great.
And we stood on the sidewalk and talked for a couple hours while the sun, we had to keep walking to get back into the shade. And that was the inception of, let's record all this stuff and see where
I wasn't expecting to see anybody, so I hadn't showered yet. And
I didn't notice. I had not either.
Yeah, I was wearing a shirt full of holes that like the cats have dug claws into that I would only wear if I was going out for a walk.
I'm pretty sure I was wearing bike shorts and a sweatshirt. So,
I love it. That's
and like a yester bun.
Things are born in moments like that.
Yeah. You were wearing black jean shorts.
That's right. It was. Well, thanks, Marshall.
Yeah.
Spontaneous moments like that.
It was. Yeah. And Marshall and I don't see each other that much anymore. We just don't run into each other. So that had we not run into each other and blabbed everything we'd been thinking for the last year, we wouldn't have had that creative burst of energy.
And did you
right?
just say, let's do a podcast?
Yeah, I just emailed him. I was like, Marshall, don't get freaked out. Like, I'm not going to start wearing your skin or anything, but do you want to do a podcast together? And then that was that.
I thought that sounded great.
Yeah. I wanted to call it Regretting Sarah Marshall, but then we ditched that.
Yeah, I like Bonn Park.
It took a few working titles.
That's very significant. I love the significance.
So as we wrap up this interview, I have one more question for you. You walked in here with a T-shirt that says "Be the Change," and I think it exemplifies a lot of what you talked about already throughout the whole podcast. But we're talking about something even bigger, aren't we? On your shirt there, "Be the Change," and just so many ways we can all just make changes.
I think so. I saw the shirt and I had to buy it.
Yeah.
And I know it's something that might be. I think it's the We Day slogan as well and stuff like that. But I guess that it's a good summary of sort of a lot of what we've been talking about when it comes to being an upstander. You have to sort of, every individual has to tell themselves this might not be a natural thing to do, but it's probably the right thing to do. And what I mean by right, I know everybody has different views, religious, non-religious, whatever, spiritual, but if we break it all down, the golden rule that's in, I think, every religion and every secular pursuit, and, I think most human beings believe if you treat others the way you want to be treated, we'll have a better world. Yeah. So if we just break that down, then I think, be the change is sort of what we're looking for there is what we can either go hide in a room because the world can be a terrible place, or we can do the glass half full, which I know we've talked about and that I strongly believe in, that we can make a better world and Many people are, and we need to support them. And it starts with individuals. I think that's the big thing. And that's what, to me, this means. Whoever came up with this phrase, it's brilliant, I think, because it says that it's you. It's each individual. Don't look somewhere else for that to happen. Start with yourself. And what are you going to do today? And what, again, to come back to Bill Gleedon's message, everything, that's the intersection of everything we've kind of talked about, right? It's that we as individuals, if we all do that one good deed a day that he talks about, then we are being the change, then we are helping. And everything we know about human nature, again, irrelevant where we came from or where we're going or whatever, but everything we know about human nature and psychology says that we influence each other. And somebody positively influencing somebody will have a ripple effect. It will. That's why I get out of bed in the morning. That's the whole thing is by trying to be a good example, by trying to help somebody, by doing some kind of act of kindness, that's going to reverberate, and that might make a much bigger difference than we could ever realize.
I often think people are kind of like a mirror. Like if you're putting something good out there and being kind, that most likely you'll get that back.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, most likely. I want to say, I might be stating the obvious here, but I want to bring up about doing good deeds and about being that change. I actually get a very wonderful, selfish feeling from good deeds.
Yes.
I feel good. I'm not going out there and I'm not a junkie who needs that good feeling, but when I choose to do a good deed, or when I just, organically it happens, it's such a wonderful, selfish feeling to give a volunteer hour, or to help somebody who needs help, or to choose not to react when somebody's having a crap day and they take it out on you, in the grocery store or the gas lineup or wherever it might be, right? Mm-hmm. It feels good to be able to walk away from one of those situations and be like, I don't need to tell a soul about this. I don't need to post it to my Facebook page.
That's right.
I just did a good thing, and I can lay down tonight and put my head on my pillow knowing that small little thing is going to go out there and reverberate.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And you brought up a good point too. And that the theories of Maslow kind of talk about this. We talk about this a lot in class too. And we talk about how we should be doing these things to help others, not for selfish reasons, but there is a very selfish motivation, which there's many studies that say, but helping others makes us feel better about ourselves. And hopefully that's not the whole reason we're doing it, but it's a side effect. That's great. Why not?
Why not?
And it really does. And that's reminds me a lot of what I see at school as well. And there was just thinking of one young lady who was having a really rough time and just wasn't happy. And she started volunteering with the students with special needs at the school. And the transformation was unbelievable. By giving her time, she just said, and she told me, she just said, I feel so much better. Yeah. And I could tell she felt so much better about herself, so much better about the world, just from giving herself, giving her time to a group of students like that.
It breaks that little negative selfishness. For a second, you need to step back and get off your own clock.
That's right.
You need to step back and stop thinking about what your needs are. It's
Yeah.
not about you.
Yeah.
Surprise, everybody. It's not all about you.
Yeah.
And giving that time is going to bounce back to you. It is going to make you feel empowered to reach out to others to do the same types of things, to be that change. Totally.
And then you're going to also have a ripple effect on them, who, and they'll probably go out and do something positive, and a lot of what we talk about as well in psychology and sociology is we know how to destroy people, and people do it every day. You tell them they're worthless, you treat them horribly, and we know what happens. Yeah. The cycle of abuse and everything else. People most often go on and do it to somebody else. So if we can flip that around and be that change we want to be and do something positive, then they're going to go out and do something positive for somebody else. Yeah. And if everybody does that, like Bill says, 35 million Canadians doing one good deed a day is 35 million good deeds a day. The world will get better. Wow. So,
I'm a big wrestling fan.
Yes.
Yeah. Big fan of Bret the Hitman Hart.
Yes.
And he closes his book with something that sounds something like this. It goes, there's something bordering on beautiful about pro wrestling, about this brotherhood, about two men taking care of each other in the ring. Right. Oh, yeah. And then he says, any idiot can hurt somebody, right? And
oh my God!
And I've always thought of that far beyond wrestling. To me, it's like I see it all the time when I look at YouTube comments and all sorts of those ugly things that just any idiot can hurt somebody. Yeah,
it takes courage to be gentle and kind, you know, and that's the thing. That's what's gonna, you know, change the world. That's for sure.
Thanks, Jeff.
Let's go and change
Thank
it
you,
together.
guys.
Yeah.
You got it. Let's
Thanks
do
so
it,
much for
guys.
coming, Jeff.
Thank
This
you.
is
It's been a
awesome.
pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.
Find Encore Records at encorerecords.ca, Facebook at Encore Records, and Instagram at Encore Kids. Sometimes music is all you need to make you feel better. Hey all, thanks for meeting us in Bonn Park. Please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you're listening to. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bonn Park Podcast. Original music by Alan Lung.